A simple truth. It really is this simple. Either you believe David Crowley is innocent or you believe he is guilty. If you believe David Crowley is guilty, you are wrong. If you believe David Crowley is innocent, you are right. It really is that simple. A United States Army veteran is dead. His wife and his 5-year-old daughter are dead. A thorough investigation would only conclude with authorities admitting they lacked evidence to support their accusations. If authorities were to admit the case remains unsolved, they would also have to admit that the public may still be in danger. I am not able to solve this case. My interest is in forcing authorities to admit David Crowley is innocent. The reason they refuse to talk about this case is not because they are confident of David's guilt. They lack confidence in their allegations. Their department wishes to move on, but they are only lying to themselves. They must know the simple truth, and they need to publicly admit this. Their credibility depends on it now. The unspoken truth is that David is innocent until proven guilty. Why are authorities running from this simple truth? How long do they think they can run for? You cannot run from God. You cannot run from your nightmares. And you cannot run from the facts. Why would anyone want to? What could possibly motivate someone to try? If you cannot prove David Crowley guilty, then he remains innocent. It's as simple as that. So the resistance we face is disgusting. If David was guilty, the evidence would be right in our faces. If David was guilty, resistance to our questions would not exist. If David was guilty, facts would be evident. There are no facts to prove David guilty. There are only facts which prove David innocent. Hence the resistance to getting justice for David Crowley and family. Who cares? Do the people who closed this case and decided to not speak about it ever again really care? Do the friends who accused David Crowley of being guilty days after his body was found really care? Perhaps they only care about spreading the accusations of David's guilt instead of researching the facts of this case. They don't seem to care about the facts which prove David innocent. Truth is a simple thing. Justice does not die. Facts prove David is innocent. Hey everyone, how's it going?
Hey, how are ya?
Doing well. Good to see you, Catherine. And good to see you both, Kristen. How are you?
Good, thank you. And this is Matt.
Hi, Matt. How are you? Very nice to meet you.
Good. Good to meet you guys as well.
Yeah, I figured I'd start us off right there, right off of the bat, for anyone who may not know this case or may have hopefully not forgotten about this case, but it's still a very fascinating case. One of the strangest cases that I've ever seen. One of the biggest unsolved mystery, and such a tragedy. What happened to 3 very young people, including one 5-year-old child, and how brutal the murder was of that 5-year-old child, and the lack of empathy, the lack of care, the lack of investigation into the case is one of the most frustrating things about this whole story. How it took them so long to find the bodies. How long were the bodies there? As Catherine has covered in great detail, who died first. And so many other things, so many other great researchers over this 11 years now, I believe, since it happened. Depending on your timeline, I guess, of when they actually died. Nobody really knows when they died. Nobody knows what the real story is, I think. So anyway, I'll just open up the floor. Kristen, I know you got some stuff that you want to talk about. Matt, it's nice to meet you. I've heard a lot. Great things, only good things. So that's always nice too. And then as always, very good to have you here, Catherine.
Thanks.
Well, we wanted to start out again saying thank you from family, because we are family by marriage. My sister is married to David Crowley's uncle, who was his mentor, as we said in the last 2 podcasts. But a lot has developed since the last 2 podcasts that I was on. And as I stated that we were in danger, we have been through hell, and we have come to the conclusion that we do actually believe that my brother-in-law and my sister plotted the murders, and we have let them know that, and they have failed to defend themselves, and they have systematically tried to target us, alienate us from our children in the same way that they did Grandma Kate, David, Kamal, Rania. They're doing the same tactics, trying to label me crazy and have us targeted and murdered and trashed. And it's all clear. And unfortunately, for them and the criminals that they are, the murderers that they are, that we happen to be DOJ, Victims Crime Act, Crimes Against Children chaplains. God had us registered years ago with the Crimes Against Children out of Dallas, Texas, and working as advocates in the domestic abuse and violence for families and children around the world. And so when we were the witnesses to the Crowley murders and the plotting and planning of taking all of our amazing combat veteran David Crowley's intellectual property, and we were the witnesses to the plotting and the planning of that, and then the disparaging of David that he killed Rania because she had autism, the villains that they are to our combat veterans, the mocking of Kamal, that she dared to name her dog Paleo, and the sexualization and cannibalization and the disgusting people that they are. They're not people, they're actually beasts, as the Bible declares. Well, they just so happen to have family members who are with the DOJ as advocates for the Victims Crime Act, which is this week. Sucks to be freaking them. So Matt has a statement because around wherever we have interests as a family and children, adult children, that they're targeting in the same manner that they did David Crowley, Kamal, Rania, and Grandma Kate. We have a lot of spotlight on this case now. Thanks to you all for sticking with it. But Matt is going to read a statement, and this report is now all over Virginia, North Carolina, Hawaii, where we have interests, where they have continued their targeting of our young to try to steal and drain all resources from our family, like they did David Crowley, and have people murdered. That's the truth. To silence us. So Matt has going to read a statement, and I think it would be of great interest to you all of why this case with David, Kamal, Rania, and Grandma Kate and the Crowley male patriarchy, domestic abuse, basically, why this is really about our case as well, and what Matt is doing about it, what we're doing as advocates with the Victims Crime Act.
I'd like to echo what Kristen said. Thank you to all of you who have been working all these years trying to get justice for the victims in the Crowley family. Truly thank you from other members of the family who do care as well. And like Kristen mentioned, Tim Crowley, David's uncle, and I have been brothers-in-law for a long time now, married to sisters. That's the relationship for me with this case. So I'll read. I apologize for a few instances of the language that is used in here as I quote. So here it goes. For the public record, I am stating today the significantly detrimental impact Tim Crowley is having on my family and me. I reached out to Tim by text on May 28th, 2024, and by phone on June 7th, 2024, requesting direct communications among all adults in our extended family for the purpose of fostering peace, especially for the sake of all of our children. His complete lack of a direct response does not mean he is not responding. Tim's dismissive arrogance in receiving my dad-to-dad requests has fully confirmed all warnings. His destructive patterns are a danger to me and my family. He retaliates and creates paranoia, primarily while hiding in the background. While under the influence of a substance, Tim sexually assaulted my wife while his wife and children slept in the other room and was confronted immediately to stop. This occurred at his home on 4704 Derbyshire Court, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23464 in the spring of 2000. After my family relocated to Virginia Beach, we were faced on a regular basis with Tim's behaviors while under the influence of substances. With the counsel of now retired psychologist Betty Lawrence at Christian Psychotherapy, we reported the situation to the guidance counselor, Mrs. DeMuth, at our kids' school, Providence Elementary, in the fall of 2008. This culminated in the exposure of Tim's abuse of alcohol, which seemingly had a positive effect, but we now know his behaviors have worsened over time. Because of a dire warning we received last summer from an anonymous source, I now know there is a very high probability Tim assaulted my son when he was an 8-year-old, having a sleepover with his cousin in mid-January 2010 at the same house on Derbyshire. On a separate occasion, after my son had simply spilled water in his house, Tim verbally assaulted him and physically required him to stand and salute him. Tim, on multiple occasions, whispered comments about, butt fucking my son, my daughter being a, quote, spawn of Satan, and that my wife would be the, quote, first one to be cannibalized when the shit hits the fan. He has defamed the characters of our deceased sister-in-law, Cami Stala, and our deceased brother-in-law, Ben Cockcroft. Tim helped to create paranoia in his now deceased nephew and his wife, David and Camille Crowley, death of a dystopian article in the April 10th, 2017 print edition of the New Yorker magazine. He was accused of breaching contract and defrauding our mutual father-in-law, Ed Kolpak, before his death on March 23rd, 2015. When that alleged crime later came to light, Tim scurried to reimburse Ed's widow and has covertly been retaliating since. Most recently, Tim has been instrumental in influencing the theft of approximately $17,000 worth of heirlooms from my family's trust, partaking in the spread of HIPAA violations of my wife and me, and instigating false accusations of abuse about my wife and me, which has created duress in our children and in our mutual mother-in-law, Marie Kolpak. With Tim's orchestration behind the scenes, Marie fled in our vehicle from our care of essentially 8 years on March 11th, 2024, abandoning all her belongings. His undue influence has created such a level of panic in Marie and in my two children that none of them will communicate with either my wife or me. We have not been able to even meet our newborn granddaughter. Because of all that I stated above, as well as Tim's history of abusing and or killing his children's pets, and because of his proficiency with his supply of weapons, I am concerned not only for my well-being, but for the safety of my family. Therefore, I have communicated with various jurisdictions where each of us in my family lived. Lastly, I, as well as my wife, Kristen, am of sound mind and not under any outside influence. We each have a completely undeterred desire to live out our lives fully. Thank you for allowing me to read that.
Thank you for
So why we wanted to read that is, then we went on the podcast. Went on the podcast, and a researcher, anonymous family member, let us know that the Crowleys are in a cult, satanic ritual abuse cult, and asked us if our children and family in 1 week's time kind of went into a zombie state, which is what's happened. But what they do is they traumatize them with an assault, and then they pull them back in. And we believe wholeheartedly that is what David, Kamal, and Rania were trying to get out of, and what they did, to drain their blood at the Red Cross. I found footage of Sean Wright with them at the Bohemian Grove being interviewed, and Sean Wright letting everyone know that they had already released copyrighted sound bites against David Crowley's will, and they mocked Sean Wright, and the interviewee mocked David Crowley as a combat veteran. And so, what this is about the villainy to our combat veteran and getting one over on him. They got off on that in a sexual manner. They're so disgusting, doing cannibal orgies. I personally believe that is what the Crowley family endured. And, they were not in that house. I'm so convinced. And we have let every family member know. I've said to Tim Crowley, Dan Crowley, Danny Boy, because I was the witness while they were plotting David Crowley's murders, while they got all the intellectual property, and we are going to make this a case study for the Victims Crime Act with the DOJ. And they know it, and they're all scurrying around, and they're terrified. I said, you freaking give me a call, Dan Crowley, Danny Boy. We're so angry with them thinking they got away with this murder and the cannibalization, because they told me that they were going to cannibalize me. Well, you don't say things like that unless you have cannibalization in your soul, which is what I believe happened to Rania, Kamal, and I'm, we're not backing down. We went to each family member, let them know that we were going to start declaring that we believe they're guilty. So there you go.
Very powerful. Very disturbing, obviously, but very powerful stuff. Definitely appreciate both of you coming on here to talk about this. Do you think there's any chance that more family members may want to come forward with their own thoughts on this? There hasn't really been a whole lot of family members that have at least publicly reached out and are willing to do something like this, which I understand why they wouldn't want to, but I want to thank you both. And we pray.
They're under threat. They're under threat. We believe our children have been threatened, with their lives. They will murder cats and animals, pets. Tim Crowley murdered the pets. And they put you in a hex. So it's very demonic and spiritual, and everyone knows it in the family. So it's twisted, and you don't believe that this is actually happening while they're doing it and saying it to you. It's very difficult to get out. We had 10 years of trauma cult deprogramming in Virginia Beach, living amongst them. And then when we came out and moved away, you guys got me, saying, I've been in a hex. I had no idea what they do. It's very powerful. It's like a warlock, and it is satanic ritual abuse. Now, as far as the Apple Valley Police, and Catherine Michelle, your exposure with Alton and what you did with the Masonic, orders, and that David Crowley was, I think he was a kill switch. I think he was a certain group of people that, with what happened in 2024, is it 2024? Yes, what happened in 2024. And then, various calamities that took place. And I can't mention names, but he had, David had all over behind him, he had the picture of the actual agency that he was addressing, right? And so I believe when they all knew that, when you hear that this combat veteran who thinks he's exposing all of this, when you hear that he's been murdered and you hear the story and it's been done, then they know to activate certain things. I think he was like the activation to a bomb, like a dynamite. And so they all knew once he was murdered, right? And they were murdered and all that happened. They all knew then to activate. It's time now to activate the, what the sequence of events that we all endured. with, and then what happened with Alton? He got in a massive car wreck and died, and the Holy Spirit told him to reveal, no matter the cost to his life, the orders. And Catherine Michelle, you worked with him to create that amazing piece that you did. And we have sent it to all the family, and we know. So the question isn't, why did a few of the detectives, cover this up? It's the brotherhood. It's the truth. So now that we have, a larger agency peering into this and doing it as a case study, they better freaking run. I know I'm saying freaking a lot, but I'm really ticked because of what they're doing to us. And they literally, and I'm ticked for Rania. I'm ticked for Kate. I'm ticked for the whole thing. And God had us front and center as witnesses. And, you guys have helped inspire us to not be afraid. That's the biggest issue. And when you're in a family and you have something like this happen, they rule you with tyranny. This is going to happen to you too. And then they proceed to show you that they're going to do that. But God, but God. And, we are in danger. We have a kill switch. And that's the reality.
Catherine, any thoughts?
I'm just trying to soak all this in. It's like what you two have been through it's insane. All because, of guilt, of greed on their part, and hatred in their hearts. And it's like, wow, the degree to which they're willing to go to get and maintain something that didn't even belong to them in the first place is mind-boggling.
Can I tell you my theory recently is, why did they sell everything to Herzog?
Oh, they did.
Tim Crowley. It's all little man syndrome. Mm-hmm. It's the Danny boys. They couldn't stand that David, right, had that, that he was superseding them, and what my theory before, and they just can't handle it, and they're in the occult themselves, and so they believe in that hierarchy, and so they just got off on, and they just love the fact that they did this, to a combat veteran and such an alpha male, right, and that how dare he get the Hollywood deal? Well, Tim Crowley was supposed to be the Hollywood deal maker, and it's all delusion, it's deception, it's darkness, and it is greed. The Bible says you can't serve, you're either going to serve that blood money or you're going to serve the King of Glory, and they serve blood money, and that's reality. But Tim Crowley went off to Alaska, and he's in a delusion believing that he's this grizzly man. Well, Herzog was the documentarian who did Grizzly Man, and I think that's why Herzog was chosen for the sloppymentary mockumentary. I also think that's why they chose the Mason boys. I just call them the Danny boys, Danny Masons, because think one's Mason Hendrick, one's Danny Mason. If you say Danny Mason, it covers all of them except Sean Wright, the little doodad dipwit. The dip shit that they had representing the family. I said recently to Tim Crowley, directly to his face, texting him. I didn't see him, but I directly am communicating with him about what I believe, to give him the opportunity to defend himself. Oh, he's such a freaking coward. He can't even, all they can do is eat off of the Crowleys, eat off of Rania, and then frame Paleo. They're such wimps. They have to destroy a dog, frame the dog. That's who these people are. Danny boy wimps. And so Tim Crowley is in a delusion, believing that he is the grizzly man. And, they just love the fact that they got one over on combat veteran David Crowley. Well, they're villains to our combat veterans. And, their whole gig is up for all eternity. They're just a bunch of freaking dog worms.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, well, not funny, haha, but the funny thing about listening to what you're saying and then knowing what I know about the case is that, here David knew. We can tell by his behavior, we can tell by how he was pulling back from certain people that he knew something was coming. And he didn't have enough proof to say, hey, these people are coming after me. So he was doing the best he could to get out and get out quickly. And, but they were, and when you have so many people against you, it's really hard to fight when you're by yourself.
Yes.
And now that you talk about certain aspects, the times when Kamel was saying that she heard people talking and she thought that the house had a demon or something. And I think they had planted devices and that they were doing this on purpose to her. It just all makes sense. It's like things are now falling into line,
Yes. And I do believe, I'm trying to sort through the root of what order, because you have various coats of arms, heraldry, basically, that they serve almost like a brand or a logo. Mm-hmm. And you have to find out what logo that they serve, which brand. If it's a top tier brand, then we're in a lot of danger. If it's a secondary tier brand and they have exposed the whole scheme, they're in a lot of trouble. And so what we're trying to do is determine, I think, their secondary tier, they're low level, and they've messed up by, they were very sloppy-umentary, extremely sloppy. And so they're very scared. They're extremely scared because, as you take it out of the Apple Valley, I call it the order of the Yabba Dabba Doobies, because we're in Snoop Dogg land out here, and we're in the true. I mean, it's very dangerous for us out here in LA County, right? So we have the order of the Yabba Dabba Doobies. They're little potheads. They're just a bunch of weasels. Not that they don't have power or they couldn't go in the underbelly and do a hit. A mafia hit or whatever they want to do to retaliate, but they're not networked that well from Apple Valley to Orange County. So it's not apples to oranges out here. We just took down a whole orange. Matt saying, don't say this. Anyway, there's a lot of takedowns going on, and we have to be very wise with what route, what logo they're attached to. And that's what I'm asking God to show us and to reveal which one they're in. And, they benefited. There's no detective or Apple group that can define why they did what they did, because they know what they did. They know what they did. They all work together. And the other detectives or police officers or deputies that are on the lower end, they're terrified. We're dealing with it in a case here. They're terrified. They're not going to shine the light on what they were doing for Danny Boy. Give me a flippin' break, little Danny Boy. He's such a wimp. And I was there. I was a witness at the Messiah concert, before he took out that 50,000, and they think they're the little Helter Skelter group. They're so peon. They're so peon.
Everything, every step that has been done in this case, it's cliche, it's messy. In the 50 grand at the time, I don't know what the going rate is now, but I did do some research, and at the time, the going rate for a hit was 50,000.
Right.
And so, they're
in
so
a delusion.
Yeah, and Danny, I mean, he's too old to be a Danny, but anyway, Dan Jr.
Right.
I mean, he's such. When I look at that
small.
man, Yeah, it's like he's such a wiener, you know?
Oh, he's such a wiener. And they are just, that's why they did what they did. And then you see them posting, their homosexual orgy faces, as Masons and blood money. Well, they've been doing it to me and Matt for 2 years solid. And they gather together and they are high on our blood. They're high on, it's exactly the same high that you see in the postings of the goons. They're doing it to us now. So that's why we're convinced that Tim and Karen Crowley are extremely guilty. I believe he is the mastermind who plotted it. And like I said, when I was there the last time, he set that gray state, thumb drive, and that was the only thing there to goad us. I don't think he understands the gifts of God's Spirit. I don't think he understands that he is fully taken over by demonic possession. He said he does know a lot, because he did say to us at some point, well, I figured out if you can't beat them, you may as well just join them. So there comes a point, where we started to see all of the darkness in our family, and we had a choice to make. Matt and I did. We went and got cult deprogramming and trauma therapy and got out, right? So the other family members, as they see it, they have to make a choice. Either I'm going to join them and become a predator myself, an apex predator, or I'm going to get out. And he made the choice to stay. And my sister is fully droned. She is, remember how you asked me if I thought she would have cared about the law, and getting the intellectual property from New York and all of that from David Crowley? And I said, oh no, she wouldn't care at all. I believe she did care after what they've done to us. They have drained the resources of my parents for $10,000 and basically willing to murder us for $10,000. My sister has. She's a robber baron. She is the most evil. What she has done to me and my husband, and to keep us from our grandchild and our children, is paramount to what they did to Kate and Rania and Kamal. Those 3 weeks to make sure there wasn't even a wellness check allowed. Wow. So I really believe they're guilty. I let them know that I believe they're guilty. And we have files and mandated reports open everywhere now. And we are expecting all family members that are doctors to mandate report them. And they're doing the Darvo. They're trying to make it, they're trying to flip it on me and Matt. Uh-oh. Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Okay, because we froze.
Yeah, we still see you and hear you.
Okay. So, what they did then is they flipped it on Matt, framed him. Tim Crowley framed him, like what they, did to frame David, frame Kate. It's like a supernatural power to do it. Got everybody to frame him and lie to judges and police, and put a restraining order on my husband on my birthday and our son Vincent's birthday, saying that he was attacking our daughter when he was bringing gifts to see our newborn grandchild. And then he ended up being all over our grandchild in Maui, so that Matt couldn't even, see our grandchild, and put a restraining order on my husband.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And the power attached to it is so evil. It's satanic ritual evil. And we're walking it out. But,
well, it's so weird, because it's like things are starting to snap into my brain now, because it made me wonder why, because they were last heard and seen from in mid-December. Their bodies are found January 7th, 14th, 17th, whatever day it was. I get it all confused still. Yeah. And there was such a long period of time, why weren't they heard from? And it is obvious by the evidence that David and Rania were not with Kamal in the house. So they separated these people.
Yes.
So now that you're talking about this and how they separate.
Yes.
And it's part of the torture.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's okay. It's falling in my brain.
Well, they probably hunted them out on the, because they're hunters. They do that kind of stuff. And that's the things that he would take us aside and do what the researcher, anonymous, person that also got out of the cult, and had to, was forced to participate in these various cult, horrific rituals. What they do to you, force you to do, right? In private. I mean, all the evidence that you brought out is that Kamal may still be alive. That may be true. Also, that they loved doing this to David Crowley, the combat veteran, and mocking him, and he was trying to get out. And also, they all came together and said, oh, he was distancing himself from us, and therefore, he went crazy, and we were just trying to reach out. And no, that's false. The reality is he didn't want to have anything to do with them because they're extremely dangerous, and they molest your little children. And they also would rape Kamal, those Mason boys, and all of them. And so the reality is he was trying to protect them. And also I went and did all the research. That's why I think my sister Karen is involved as the lawyer. They had stolen, before all of this, all of his intellectual property. And it was all in, he was starting to see that. And he started to say in a panic, I'm just going to give it all away. I'm just going to give it all away. And the mics. And then I heard, what you guys, the research you did with the producers, and what Mike said. I mean, he loved the Crowleys. He was close friends with them. They were getting ready to, move them there to produce everything. And the 30 Million Sons of Anarchy TV series. And he said, what is the matter with this family? Like, why didn't they go check on them, right, over Christmas? Well, I can tell you. And then they forced the mics to go silent. And then who's the spokesperson for the Crowley family? I'm going to say it. Freaking Sean Wright and Danny Boy Mason, and Mason Danny Boy. I mean, give me a flipping break. David Crowley and Kamal, all of us wanted nothing to do with that Danny Boy and those Danny Boys. How dare they speak up for the family? And Kate couldn't even speak, or any of us. We weren't even interviewed. And I'm a full witness to the Danny Boys planning this whole thing to mock our combat veteran, steal all of his intellectual property, and then, do an orgy on their dead bodies and torturing Rania. And her blood is crying out for all eternity.
That's very
How dare they?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's such a mindset that I don't think most people can understand the depth of depravity that a brain like that goes to.
Right.
And that also explains a little bit better. And this could just be me putting things together that don't belong. I could be trying to force fit a puzzle piece, but the way that the floor was set up in the house with the candle and the dead flowers, and it was just this weird presentation in the living room on the floor where they died. They didn't die on that floor, but they were placed on the floor. Yeah. But it's like, again, everything's coming into place.
Yes.
Yeah, they took the photos of it, and I remember Mason Hendricks was pretty upset that we were posting his photos online. That was it, because of photos that he owned, apparently. And for that film, and it was okay for the filmmakers to have it and everything. It's okay for them to make money off of it
and put it online.
It's all about them. They've made the case, or they've tried to at least make it all about them. I think that was one of the reasons why they reached out to me so early. They wanted me to express all of this to the group, to the people that weren't paying attention to them,
Right.
And you talked about the separation, and a lot of the separation, you could also go back to David's wife's family, and them moving from Texas to Minnesota to get David's wife away from her family.
Correct. And I think that's a whole nother piece that is very, Danny Boy doing the GoFundMe with the her family. Okay. I think,
Yeah.
that's very, 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 very strange and very serious.
Yes.
I
And
also
her family
believe,
didn't know about that though, right? And they
Right.
told him to take it down. So
Right.
he's
So
trying to, yeah,
it just goes back to it's all about them.
him.
They're still making it
exactly.
all about them. They're the victims. And if anyone were to question them or question the story, we were the bad ones. We were the bad ones, and they were the good guys holding on to this fictitious theory that David Crowley killed his wife, killed his daughter, and killed himself. And it was
Well,
crazy.
yes, and the fictitious theory is they did that pact. I saw Sean Wright immediately, and that they wanted to go, and the Queen of Heaven called them forward, and that's like a ritual, very known ritual in these underbelly groups, right? And so they were participating in all of that, and I believe planting those seeds, like you said, Catherine Michelle. I mean, it's very studied. It's very known. It's all out in the light now with the whole Z Ranch going on,
Oh, yeah. And it also makes sense too why Sean Wright and Danny Mason and then Mason Hendricks. Well, not so much Mason. I never heard from Mason Hendricks personally, but I heard definitely from Sean Wright. I might have exchanged 1 or 2 emails with Mason, not really sure, Danny Mason, but how they would, anybody who was looking into it, they then try to attach themselves to you, and they try to ingratiate themselves in your life. And then right away they start to try to turn you against David. And when that didn't work, they came at us with both barrels blazing.
Yeah, very angry with threats, with all the same stuff. And you're just like, dude, you're not doing yourself any favor to if you want people to think that you weren't involved in this, you're doing everything wrong. You're doing everything backwards. I mean, they put a big spotlight on themselves, and I don't know if that was their intention.
They're not very bright, so I don't think it was.
To see it backfire the way that it did, where people are like, why are you guys so quick to say this? And, you're friends with him, and he was distancing himself, especially when the Day One Journal came out and really just disproved pretty much just about everything that they're saying. And it was worse.
They planted it, and they took it over, and they put horrible, they lied in it. Yeah. They changed the stuff in it.
And they deleted all of the stuff that maybe could have proven, but everything that they deleted, what was left, like you were saying, just shows that it wasn't David.
Right. Well, and it's backfiring on them in my case, because I'm saying, okay, fine. If you want to say he was a domestic violent abuser, David Crowley, that's the whole theory, and we can't change that. And millions of people believe it, and you got your documentary out, and you did your whole propaganda machine that you do. Okay, so then you're a domestic abusive Crowley male patriarchy, and you've got your boomer queen bullies like my sister Karen keeping it all going and destroying me, targeting us, and trashing the competition. Well, then I'm going for the women helping women, and I'm saying, Rania and Kamal and Kate were then subjected, and we're still being subjected to the male patriarchy, domestic violence. And, they have Rania as the domestic violence and domestic abuse poster child. Yeah. And so that's where I'm headed in terms of, I'm not going to work with these ridiculous domestic abuse male patriarchies, and it's boomerang on them. And so I'm speaking on behalf of me as a woman, what I've endured by the Crowley male patriarchy, right? And like I said, the whole system stinks to high heaven. Dan Crowley Sr. was a horrific domestic abuser. The next Dan with Kate, right? I told you guys they were getting out, and she was retaliated against for getting out. And then my sister, as a queen bully with Tim Crowley, keeping the patriarchy going, made sure she was divorced, isolated, and erased. And that's what I was addressing, is you've got these male and female alphas, murderers, plotters. It's not just the male patriarchy, but it took my sister, a queen bully, boomer bully, and a toxic Tim male patriarchy to carry this out. And then, it's boomeranging on them because they don't care. They never focus on even Rania, Kate, the isolation at, the 3-week time frame of not even a wellness check. And that's a very big deal because that's what they've been doing to us. They have forced our children, all our adult children, can't even do wellness checks on us, right? And they want us isolated. And so all the detectives involved in our case, which is really the Rania, Kamal, Kate case, right? Because we're going to take out David out of the situation. You guys have been working hard to get him cleared, which we agree. But, it's millions of people that are willing to put him under the bus. So we're going to go on how come Mike said, what's wrong with this family that they didn't even check on Rania or Paleo, right? I mean, where are those neighbors hearing that dog bark? My theory is there was no dog barking. They were not in there for 3 weeks. They were being hunted, cannibalized, tortured, horrific things happening to them, which is what this group cult does. And so then they did place the body. That's why I said, Greg, your, take on it immediately as the gray stage is so brilliant. It's so full of light and it's exposed them. I mean, like nobody's business. And your whole, hey, there's going to be a family member. There's going to be someone that is going to see this. And, that happened and it's happening. But the thing is we're going towards the backfiring on, they're all a bunch of male patriarch domestic abusers using a queen bully female lawyer, my sister, to carry out their plot and get all the intellectual property as a robber barons and vultures, right? And for their blood money. And sucks to be them that we happen to be the family members. And God has us, with the Victims Crime Act this week with the DOJ. And we're using this as a case study. So all of your work is going to be, it is just golden, you guys. Thank you.
Anytime, anything. It's like I've always said, if I believed in fact, I went into the whole thing thinking he probably had done it, but because I didn't know, I knew nothing.
Right.
And as soon as I started reading the reports, I'm like, this guy didn't do this. It's so obvious from the get-go.
Thank you, guys. So what I think is going to start happening is we're shining the light on the domestic abuse of the Crowley males, right? And the Danny boys doing it to their own amazing combat veteran. They're willing to do it. And it's the ostracization, that God says that the ostrich, is very cruel to their young, and they'll set one out to be trampled and eaten while they sit on the golden egg. Well, there you have, all of them in New York gathering with their, they're addicted to the blood money and they're addicted to the hit. And so they've been doing it to us now for 2 years. And they're addicted when they gather. They just love, they are, because they're also they're into drugs and alcohol too. So they framed Kate and David with drugs and alcohol, but they actually are into absinthe and drugs and alcohol. They have to do mind altering, things to themselves, because they're in such a state of depravity to live with themselves. But, I let Tim and Karen Crowley know exactly what I'm doing and what I'm saying. They've had an opportunity to contact you all and authorities, and they've chosen not to. They've actually become more criminal and more horrific. And so I'm highly convinced that they're guilty of plotting it and benefiting from the intellectual property of David Crowley's, and it backfired on them. But moving forward, we are we're moving forward, and they're not getting away with it. But I let them both know, what we're doing, gave them the opportunity to defend themselves. And then now we're putting pressure on their own oldest daughter, who is a pediatrician and was the one who was the closest to Rania and Kamal. She was at the birthday party. Her name is Dr. Samantha Sanchez. And I'm putting a lot of pressure on her as a pediatrician. She's a mandated reporter. And she's going to have to turn on her own parents and report them, because she knows. I mean, she witnessed her own father murdering her pet dog, Tim Crowley. A lot of times these psychopaths, they murder animals first. So we have a case with PETA where he outran their pet dog, murdered that pet dog. And, we're not stopping. But what's happening now is the oldest grandchild, or the oldest cousin of David's, was closest to Rania, wasn't allowed to grieve, wasn't allowed to acknowledge and disassociate from it. Well, they wanted her to be a doctor so bad. They wanted her to be a surgeon, but she couldn't handle blood, which I think is very interesting. And we got to mentor her and love her and help nurture Dr. Sanchez. And she's 20? She's married, and
She's soon to be 20.
So at her wedding is when everything fell apart. Or basically, Tim and Karen Crowley told us we were not their family and we were not allowed to come to their oldest daughter's wedding, even though, we basically were the people that nurtured her. So, we started getting this isolation retaliation from Tim and Karen Crowley related to their daughter, Dr. Sanchez, who was closest to David, Rania, Kamal, and Grandma Kate. She was the one that loved Rania. She was never allowed to even acknowledge Rania's death. Paleo's, but now she's a pediatrician, and so we're working with her. And she's in San Antonio, Texas, which I think is very interesting because, Danny Mason moved to Texas. A lot of this, is going to need FBI, DOJ spotlight because it's now, not just Apple Valley and in Minnesota. So we are putting a lot of pressure on Dr. Sanchez, the daughter, the oldest daughter, to report her parents and report the domestic abuse of Rania and the murder as a mandated reporter. So that is one thing. And we just so happen to have our connections with an incredible lawyer named Gregory Love, who has, and then Crimes Against Children is based out of Dallas. It's where all of the FBI, DOJ, it's where we all study case studies. And it's like our industry, like showcase where, and I'm a registered exhibitor with our nonprofit, and we were able to attend as chaplains, and I became registered with the DOJ, years ago. And I'm a registered Victims Crime Act advocate with the DOJ, and then with Crimes Against Children as an exhibitor. And so what we want to do is create a resource, and we just launched it for David Crowley, and it's called Villains of Combat Veterans at Home. And we are going to be creating a resource based upon, helping this with this story and different things that happen to our combat veterans when they come home by their own family members. And his case is going to be, I hope, exhibited and used as a case study. But then as we shine the light on it and get, various jurisdictions involved, right? And not just Apple Valley Order of the Yabba Dabba Doobie group there, little Mr. That face of that detective, I just want to take his grin. What was the detective that wrapped the case up and he's all being interviewed a year later?
I think that was Captain Wright School, I believe.
Whichever one, his face really bothers me. Little smug, and you showed Catherine Michelle that he's part of the Order of the Yabba Dabba Doobie there. The doodads.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that little apple boy, Johnny Appleseed, he,
I know you're serious, but you're cracking me up.
No, I do satire.
I love it.
Johnny Appleseed. Well, we have to laugh because it's so disgusting, right?
Yeah.
And all they did is mock and laugh. And so God mocks them, and I have been directly mocking them. So Tim Crowley was into Rich Dad, Poor Dad with, that whole Yamaguchi, whatever his name is.
Robert Kiyosaki.
Robert Kiyosaki. And he was going to be Mr. Rich, Rich Dad. Well, it talks about assets or liabilities, and his whole value system is, are you an asset? Is a dog an asset? Is it a liability? And Midas, the poor dog that they murdered, became a liability, so he had to murder him. And then, so everything's about asset or liability. So David Crowley was too big of an asset, and they had to steal our assets. And it's all about whether you're a liability or an asset, because you know what they're involved with? They're eugenics. They're eugenicists. And that's the reality. They believe in survival of the fittest. But I've been letting them know they ain't the fittest. And it's their turn to, Jesus said, Taya, it'd be better for people like this, beasts, to tie a millstone around your neck and go off into the sea of forgetfulness, dude. Well, in that Robert Kiyosaki book, it talked about the liabilities, and he would nickname them doodads. So my nickname for Tim Crowley is now doodad. He's just a freaking liability. It's time to cut the slack. We come from the Olympics swim out here in Long Beach. We're swimmers. And what you do before a huge race is you trim the fat, you cut the slack, you shave your entire body of all hair so you can swim the fastest. Well, guess what? These Danny boys and little Tim Doodad Crowley, I call him the lumberjack. Watch the SNL sketch of the lumberjack of I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. And then he was a cheerleader in college, and he is a cheerleader. And then he won the Iron Man lottery in Hawaii, and we have a picture of him where his eyes are so drugged up, demented. And we call him the Iron Scam instead of the Iron Man. So this little doodad, and the little Danny boys, they're getting a taste of their own medicine. And so we're bringing it to Dallas, Texas with the crimes against children. Gregory Love, our incredible lawyer who's brought down the Vatican and was brought in by the Olympic Committee to safeguard all of our elite athletes with the Olympics after the Nassar case with Michigan State. Too bad for these Danny boys and little Mr. Johnny Appleseed from the order of the Yabba Dabba Doobie out there in Apple land. Too bad that, they messed with the, larger organizations that are shining the light on them now. And they're going to go off, and they can go ice fish. How about they go salmon fish in Pakistan, salmon fishing in Yemen.
You said it's happening next week, you said?
This week is the Victims Crime Act. Yes.
Okay.
And so we are advocating. And also I've got a lot of they do epidemiology posters, which are basically data posters. And I am bringing that to the forefront because this is a poster child. These are the poster family for, them people getting away with, murdering our combat veteran villains to our combat veteran. Right. And what they'll do to them, especially if they tell truth. I mean, way too much truth, right? You're not allowed to do that. Well, too bad. We're telling the truth on little Danny boy, that weasel. I was there. What a weasel at the Messiah concert when he was planning, when they were planning David Crowley's, this whole thing. I was there.
All right. Anyone have any final words, final thoughts before I shut down this recording? I want to thank everybody for taking the time for joining us, for your bravery. The prayers will continue. We know that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior. We know he sees everything. Yeah. Nothing gets past him. And nobody will, we all will be judged in the end here. Yeah. So, You know, what is done in the darkness, God sees everything.
Yeah, and I
Well,
just want
that-
to say thank you for coming on, and thank you for your statement, Matt. That and a lot of things, like I said, what you said, it's like now my brain is starting to go into overdrive and put everything together, trying to piece everything together. But you've helped a lot of it get solidified now. And with every time we do something like this, we do a video or we talk about this case, it's like more and more evidence comes to light that David is innocent. He,
Yeah.
he was murdered. Like you said, they abused and they tortured this combat veteran and
Yeah.
a man, a husband. They just didn't have the right to do that.
No. They stole, they drained his resources under the barrel of a gun, which is what they've been doing to us for 2 years. They did to Kate. Right. So this is the nature of these, of this cult family, supposed family.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both. And we hope to hear from you soon, get more updates, and just keep praying about it, because whatever God's plan is, we know that's what's going to happen here. And like I said, it's a very, very strange case. And I'm looking forward to seeing justice for it. And I think in some ways we have been getting justice for it just by keeping this going, by reminding people that, hey, this case is not solved. This is not a solved case. And the more you research, the more it looks like this isn't just about David either. It is about something darker, something very, very dark. And then, you kind of want to warn people to even research this stuff, because it can bring a dark cloud. A dark cloud can also hover. But if you have Jesus Christ with you, you got nothing to fear at all.
Can I just say one other thing that's really cool with justice? In Newport News in Virginia Beach, where we lived, it's like the Investigate Discovery, where all that is filmed. And we just happened to be a family that were principal actors for those different true crime sagas on Investigate Discovery, ID.
Alaska.
So Alaska, Ice Cold Killers, and different ones. Well, you guys are, they mock true crime journalists, right? And really, I just wanted to say that we're preparing, and what you guys have done is really, it's a whole field of study, and it's not unsolvable, and it's not weird. I mean, they have, we were involved with true crime sagas and scripts and acting, and I really believe that's another place where it's going to be communicated, and it's right there in Newport News in Virginia Beach, where we were.
Excellent. All right, everyone. Thank you all very much again, and we look forward. Thank you for coming on short notice. I do appreciate that, and God bless you all. And until next time, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you. God bless.
You too.